Good morning, good evening, and wherever the sun may find you. My name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts on Keystroke Medium. Today we have a rock star book purveyor and author extraordinaire, Mr. Nick Cole. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. I'm glad the two of us like to attack Monday with all hands swinging.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and copious amounts of weapons in reach in our pre-show.
Weapons and coffee. What can go wrong?
Oh my God. Oh my God. You know, I got to tell you, Doug Mercaida does a thing like a coffee talk kind of thing. And I believe he does it on Tuesday mornings. He's like my hero. That guy is savage and a gentleman at the same time.
Yeah, he's got a good. You turned me onto the videos this weekend, and everybody should, be thinking about those things in these times and watching things go nuts. But you could probably not learn from a more fun, affable guy who it seems absolutely like he could cut your throat. Which is, like it's fun to learn from everybody, but sometimes you learn from sometimes you watch guys and they're way too intimidating, especially the ex, operator, or whatever they are, gun guy, I'm wearing a mohawk this week, or, I've got the Marine bark and everything like that. And there's a level of it's intimidating and you can see them screaming at you and stuff like that. But then when you find somebody who's just easygoing and affable, I always learned in my life, that's probably the guy you need to be the most afraid of.
Oh, he's cool. He's a cool cat to train with. I've
Yeah.
had the privilege for a couple of seminars. Yeah, he's a lot of fun. So today we're talking up the Dragon Award nominations, but before that, we're talking my favorite subject on the planet. Oh, better than violence, coffee, coffee, coffee. So I'm rocking a Kenya roast that might have been sent to me by somebody, and it is fantastic. A little bit acidic, really nutty, good flavored coffee. I really, really love it. How about you, Nick? What kind of coffee have you not partaken this morning?
No, I already pounded my first cup, and it was from a brewery called Old Town Brewery, which is here in Tustin, California. I'm not in Tustin, but it's in Tustin, which is nearby. We have a lot of craft coffee roasters here. Southern California kind of became the epicenter for coffee at a certain point. Right after I got out of the military, after couch surfing and being a loser for a couple of years. I was able to pick up a job in coffee at Dietrich Coffee, which was a really great Southern California micro chain that Martin Dietrich was the owner of that. And his dad was a German officer in the German army. And so after he fled, the fall of Germany, he went down to Argentina, of course. But he found a bombed out train and built his first roaster. And so they started a coffee plantation in Costa Rica, and they were the biggest coffee, enthusiasts. They had that sort of Germanic passion for getting it absolutely right. So you can still, Dietrich roasters are the roaster you want to have. I always had this fantasy of having a coffee shop because of what I learned in that time. And so Dietrich roasters are what you really want to have. They're big industrial roasters. You can roast small batch, really great stuff. But that's where I learned about, the different types of roasts, and the different types of beans and stuff like that. So generally I'm always going to hit something from Latin America because that's for me what always works. If I like to be very mellow but still kind of heavy, I'll go to Africa. Generally I don't like Southeast Asian coffee. It's too acidic, because that's the Subica bean. They grow like wild. But it's the Arabica beans that are harder to grow that I think you kind of get the flavor profiles I like.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like those Southeast Asian coffees because I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time in Japan. I spent time in the Philippines. So
Right.
yeah, it was really all you could get your hands on, unless you wanted to pay like ridiculous amounts of money.
Right.
Um, And
And
you know,
it's still great. It just like I'll never put down it just it's what you like and what works for you. My favorite absolute like way to drink coffee is Turkish,
oh wow,
because
yeah.
that's but that's like taking straight heroin, but and it's so like you don't even cut it or anything. It's so dark, but I like the whole process. Nicole's coming into the car.
Hey, Nicole.
Um, she's back there. Hey, Nicole. She'll join us shortly.
Nice.
But I like the fact that if you ever watch Turkish coffee made, it's made like in a little sand pile,
Hmm.
and it's brewed 3 times, and you get the cardamom and the cinnamon in there. Like I don't like frou-frou coffees, like I don't like
Yeah.
caramels and all this kind of flavors and everything like that. But I think when you do Turkish coffee and you do it with the spices and you bring it to a boil 3 times, and literally the grounds are in there and they're like sludge, and then you drink that. Like if I could drink that every day, that's how I do it. Or I would drink it like the Italians drink it, in just really short kind of, bam, here's my espresso in the morning. Maybe I have a latte about mid-morning, and then cappuccinos for the rest of the day. And then
Right.
ultimately cappuccinos become sort of my favorite, because I just want to drink coffee and kind of have a little bit of foam. I think, what Starbucks has done is they sell you a little bit of coffee and a ton of milk for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you sit there and you grab that coffee from them, you make a face, and they
Yeah.
or you're just like, hey, thanks, because when you
Yeah.
pick up a cappuccino, it's very light,
Yeah.
because of the way it should be made, and you pick this this gallon of milk up that has a splash of
Yeah.
coffee in it, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh well, you should have asked for it dry. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and 8 pumps of sugar. I always feel like
Oh,
I'm doing something incredibly wrong when I go to Starbucks. I feel ashamed. I feel like couch surfing Nick, who is maybe hooking up with people he shouldn't have been hooking up with and knowing better. Starbucks is basically your booty call, and it doesn't matter that it's 2 a.m. You're just like, and anytime Starbucks does something like sort of progressive and I want to boycott them or just something stupid, I'm always like, yes, I am never going to, like, that's the easiest decision for me to make until there is no other coffee available. Like, and so during the first part of the crisis, a lot of businesses closed and it was hard to find coffee. And so, Starbucks, you could hit a Starbucks drive through. And so, like, you've read a book that me and Jason recently wrote, and it was about a character's love of coffee, and that character in a lot of ways is me. Like, I can make a lot of bold proclamations about turning my back on Starbucks, but the moment Starbucks is my only option, I'm like, all right, I'm back. I'm sorry, like I know I love you. That was wrong. I didn't mean that when I broke up with you last time.
and technically, you ordering that coffee is like going to confession.
Yeah, and I feel ashamed, but I have coffee, so who cares? I realize that at a point, I'm a giant whore, and it doesn't matter. I'll do anything for coffee. And in fact, Nicole and I were talking about that last night. We were talking about the post-apocalypse, which I used to that's where I started writing it and stuff like that. And she was saying, like, like, well, what would you do? Because like coffee's my last addiction. Um, because I used to drink a lot and I used to smoke a lot, and I don't do those things anymore. So coffee is my last addiction. I said, well, if it's a scenario like a Stephen King super virus or bug and everybody dies, I'm probably fine. Like basically what I would spend my first 3 days going is hitting all the coffee shops, bagging that coffee up in airtight containers. And I'll get like 7 years of coffee out of that. And then I take all the Folgers cans and I store those in my, a doomsday bunker. Everybody else is thinking about guns and weapons and jewels and explosives, and I'm thinking about coffee. So, like, I'll probably get about 20 years worth of coffee. I said, but if it's kind of what it really would be, which is everybody starts killing each other, then there's fires, and then the survivors that remain start blowing through all the supplies. I said, then I have problems. Then I actually have to start my own coffee plantation. Other people are building post-apocalyptic gas station fortresses, and I'm thinking about building a post-apocalyptic coffee plantation.
I so need to live there in the
Yeah,
post-apocalyptic coffee plantation.
exactly. Yeah, good
Just
luck with all your gas. As long as I have a rifle and coffee, who cares?
Right? Oh my God. A certain translator
Yeah,
has the
yeah,
right idea.
exactly, exactly.
Um, but today we're here to kind of discuss the Dragon Award nomination for this little bad mamma jamma, which is the Savage Wars. Um,
Yes.
can you talk about how the Savage Wars came about?
The Savage Wars comes about really out of the Galaxy's Edge series, and I think it mainly comes out of the Rex storyline, which is that Rex was this sort of 2,000-year-old eternal kind of warrior. He was a general. We meet him in Galaxy's Edge in the first opening books. He's a he's like a basically a cross between Obi-Wan and Boba Fett with Alzheimer's. But he has this backstory that he's actually the creator of the Legionnaires who are trying to kill him. And he's the original general. And we so like when we went back, again, Galaxy's Edge is always Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off and done better, done sexier. You can have your California legal AR-15 with a bullet button and disconnect the upper and lower receivers and no cool tactical stuff on it and everything like that. And that is effectively Star Wars right now. Or you can go get a really slutty, cool gun, with lasers and foregrips and all kinds of great sights and everything like that. And that is Galaxy's Edge. So what we have with Rex is when you had the original Star Wars. Remember they mentioned the Clone Wars in Episode 1, and you don't know anything about that until you're supremely let down when you finally do. And so for us, that was the Savage Wars. And that was sort of it's only hinted to in kind of the first story series, but when we went and did polls, we found that people really wanted to know about what the Savage Wars was. And so it was time to go back and tell that story. So Jason and I sat down and did a lot of plotting and a lot of planning and trying to figure out what exactly it was. And what it really is, it is an origin story for Galaxy's Edge and mainly the Legion. So it tells how they come into being. And so the first book, Savage Wars, is basically pre-Legion, and it's a time when the galaxy's just sort of expanding. There are a few big sort of micro empires. We've left Earth. There's the whole shenanigans about why we leave Earth, and that like our modern elites, the tech giants, the people who think they're better than us, they get sick of our shit. They're tired of ruining the Earth, so they build these fantastic starships, basically like floating cities, and they take off, but they only take off at sublight. So it's a good 40 to 60 to 80-year crawl towards the world that they're going to try to build their utopia on. Meanwhile, the rest of us chungos are kind of left here, and we're fighting it out for the last, bags of coffee and Ritz crackers. And someone accidentally invents the hyperdrive, and they're like, "Hey, I'm going to put this on the internet and make it open source, and everybody can just figure out their own way to do it." And basically, humanity just takes off towards the stars at light speed, outdistancing our superior, elites, and reaching those planets first and colonizing them. So when the what are called the savages begin to show up, their societies have gone a little nuts. Very, Kurt's Heart of Darkness. Where I just watched this fascinating documentary about the island of Dr. Moreau with Brando. So basically like that, just going super crazy. And then they are now sort of the space age equivalent of Vikings, and they're very xenophobic, and they don't want to get along, and they start sacking these planets. And they have some advantages in tech, in that their little worlds floating through space have been able to come up with some vast technology, some superior weapon systems. They've also been able to concentrate and breed, whereas what happened with the hyperdrive is humanity went in about 86,000 different directions at once. And that was dangerous. That was very zero viability, because again, it would be like people were building their own starships and taking off for the nearest world they could find, and they were doing it badly and getting killed, and there weren't enough of them to sort of grow the population. So when we arrive at the Savage Wars, they've managed to create a few micro empires, and now the savages are coming in from the darkness between the worlds, and they're beginning to just sack these worlds for resources, for slaves. They're pretty dark, pretty weird, pretty twisted people, and there's a definite need for some kind of response but no one can get a response together. And so the first book is about the first major battle where all the worlds get together and they try to fight it against the savages and they lose. But out of that loss comes what we know in Galaxy's Edge is the Legion, which is the toughest soldiers in the universe based on modern US Army Rangers. They're the 1% of the 1% of the 1%.
That's
Yeah.
Rockstar. Yeah, the seeing the Galaxy's Edge expand into the Savage Wars, just because of the amount of time that it takes to actually
Yeah.
go through. There's so much possibility for
Yeah.
story in there. But the thing that I think, I don't know about anybody else, but I think the thing that I noticed across all three books in the series is there's in each book there is a revelation moment.
Mhm.
In the first book, it comes from a colonel that you meet, and you're just like, whoa, you kind of know what's going on, but yet when it
Yeah.
really happens, you're like, oh my God. In the second book, the revelation really comes from the biggest revelation comes from Prometheus, but go to the when you go to like the human perspective, the revelation really doesn't come from someone you think it will. It comes from someone else, and you're just like, that is sad and tragic, but also triumphant too. And you're just like, you feel that sense of camaraderie in these
Yeah.
characters. And then, of course, the third book, once again, that triumphant moment comes from that person from book two. So it's like there's always a moment in there where you're like, yes, the cavalry has arrived, And I thought that was really wild.
that's
Riotous.
that's
Oh,
that's
go
the
ahead.
fun of the origin story. I mean, like if you've heard about the Galaxy's Edge series and you're like 9 books, and then there's a bunch of other books. I don't want to jump in. You could read the first 3 Savage Wars books, which is a standalone trilogy, and enjoy those as a good science fiction series. You do not need Galaxy's Edge. You could walk away. But the cool thing about Galaxy's Edge, when you, it's like when we see the Spider-Man or the Batman movie, and they always redo the origin story because the origin story is so much fun, and you can plant all that stuff that the faithful get a payoff out of. Oh, that's how he got the Batmobile and stuff like that. And so that was the fun of writing Savage Wars, is because it very much is a Legion origin story.
James McCormick saying, "How does Nick look younger every day?" And then he says he knows your secret. But
The blood
Riotous
of my enemies.
Right. Riotous Rich was saying, do you think the savages are looking for coffee?
They would be, they see, here would be the Savage perspective. There's always an inner elite circle that's determining how everybody needs to think, because that's the path forward. And so if there is an abundance of coffee, then that's fine. In fact, coffee is the thing that you all should be having. The thing that you can't have is bad. And that's it's basically the thing about the savages is they are basically extreme forms of technological socialism. And so the truth has departed. It's very postmodern. And if the savages can't have coffee, then coffee would be a sin to have, and it would be wrong for you to want to have it. Kind of like you see in a lot of modern trends, like now, anything we want, like dishwashers that work or guns, we're told that we're basically monsters for wanting those things. The trend that you'll see is that with the left now is they're trying to get you to eat bugs.
What?
And they'll tell you, yeah, it's the whole new food trend. Like, oh, bugs are more sustainable, and we shouldn't be eating cows and meat. And I'm all, screw that. I am going to have a tomahawk steak anytime I want. After the coffee plantation, I guess I'm going to have to become Kevin Costner in Yellowstone.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So,
But as somebody who has done the bug thing, I'm,
yeah, it's
including
not
like the rock fried spiders.
right.
No steaks. It's definitely
No,
steaks.
steaks, steak. Could Thag, who invented the Thagomizer, in 2 million BC, be wrong? No, you want a good steak.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. What was it like for you and Jason to get that Dragon Awards nod?
It was really cool. I mean, we got it. We got it last year with Order of the Centurion, but we were up against David Weber, and we were pretty sure we were going to lose, because you just lose to David Weber because he's the man. But this year, I think we feel really good about it. We were excited about it. But there's also just the perspective of awards are great. They do not do anything for you. They don't um they don't do any of the things that you think that they should do for you. Like Hollywood should say, oh my gosh, a Dragon Award, we need to make this into a movie. um they don't, the head cheerleader will not call and say, I just saw you won the Dragon and I realized I should have given you more time in high school. uh your parents aren't ever going to go, yes, yes, this is why we love you. They either just love you, which they most likely do, or they don't. My parents never read one book that I wrote. So if you're looking for some, then that's the thing that writers have. Like, if you're looking for some kind of weird approval out of this, you're not going to get it. And you're not going to get it from other writers, because other writers generally hate your guts, and they hate your guts the more successful that you get. So I don't know what we're looking for out of it. I think that would have been my answer 6 months ago. But what I realize the Dragon does for you now is it's really about the readers, or quote unquote fans. And I don't like to call readers fans, I like to call them readers. But what it shows you is, because the beauty of the Dragon Award is it's not a gatekeeper award like the Hugos, which is, we have to have a select committee of tastemakers who tell you who tell you that coffee is good or coffee is bad. What the Dragons are is it's really it's the readers, it's the people who love the series, going in and wanting to share that love, and wanting that love to be acknowledged. So it's a navigational device in your career, and that's why the Dragon becomes important, because it lets you know that your readers are enthusiastically responding to that. And why that's important to us indies is, back in the old days of publishing, you basically wrote in a vacuum. If you got a hit, then a year later the publisher came to you and said, we should maybe make a few more books. And then if you were a good writer, instead of, like, two of the biggest knobs that we have in science fiction, right, or fantasy and science fiction right now, you got to work and you got it done and you got the readers another book a year after that. So, there's a 2-year lag time. But we indies don't have big trade, pub deal, advanced deals, which don't exist anymore. And we can't write in a vacuum. We write connected to the readers. And the danger of being a writer is wanting to write what you want to write and realizing the readers want something else. Because it's really, we have to divest ourselves of that. I'm an artist and I write whatever I want. That's not what we do as indies. We are service providers. So we listen to what the readers want, we think about what we can do, and then we try to meet their needs and expectations. And so what the Dragon does is it tells us, like, oh my gosh, one, people want more Galaxy's Edge, and two, they want more Savage Wars. And so that's a really great tool, because the worst thing that you can do as an indie writer is feel really passionate about the book that you want to write, and then you write it. In fact, what you really should do is you should write 3 to 7 books so that you can bam, 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 rapid release. But then you do it and no one comes. And then you go to Nick Cole and you go, oh, you're a big con artist. Your rapid release method is stupid and you lied to me. I'm like, no, you wrote something nobody wanted to read. So you have to write things that people want to read, and you have to plan and anticipate for success before you actually publish anything, which is not the traditional publishing method, which is not how writers think. A lot of writers think, well, I have this great idea and it's a twist, and I'm going to put it out there and see if it's a success. Well, great. It was a success for 30 days, and now everybody's moved on, and you're still not even near finishing book 2. And by the time you get around to book 2 in 6 months, they've gone on to 3 different genres, or 7 different authors. Readers are voracious. So what the Dragon does is a navigational instrument that lets Jason and I know exactly what we're doing, and to keep doing it, and it helps us to understand our readers more, who we're trying to serve, and to communicate with them, and for them to communicate with us, which is what a real indie wants. You don't want, it's nice when they call up and they say, oh, I love you, and you're great, and I had this experience with your book, great. But the cool thing is when you have a relationship and they begin to take ownership of the world, which is really what has come up with Galaxy's Edge now that other people are writing in it. The readers and the enthusiasts are making their own game. They're making their own STL files. They're making their own cosplay. They're making their own stickers. They're taking ownership. As I've often said, Jason and I should be able to die in a tragic homoerotic murder suicide, and Galaxy's Edge should go on.
That just went in a way I didn't expect. Normally, somebody catches me like that, I spit coffee all over. Luckily, I finished my coffee, which is kind of depressing. But oh my god, that's fantastic. So, what goes from here? So we have Savage Wars. What should people be on the lookout for in Galaxy's
Well,
Edge coming
season
up?
2 is under construction and underway, and we are just working on a big announcement that we're supposed to have some clarity on this week that I think will make everybody very happy. And so that
Is that
will
the Masters KTF book?
it'll be even bigger than that. It'll be even bigger than that, and it'll be a kind of, let's just say, I'll drop a teaser word. It'll be a restoration, and
Ooh.
that'll be interesting. So that's season 2. Basically, we have a contract with Audible for 3 more Savage Wars novels and three Rex novels. So the Savage Wars novels, we're kind of feeling our way through that, like what we want to. I know what I want to do. I just don't know that it's what everybody wants to do. With the Rex novels, which is contracts and terminations, you're just going to get more Rex doing what Rex does, which is, basically revenge. It's very much. They're very simple tales. They're the most fun to tell. Obviously, we're going to get more into Balder and find out what his deal, what his Obi-Wan thing is in the galaxy.
Oh
And
my
I think
god.
some bigger, I think, yeah, it's hard not to get into the first Rex novel starts off as very much a tale of revenge, and then as you add more characters like Fancy Pants and the Ubarian Gunnery Bot, and people's stories, like it begins, like it gets to that sort of seasonal arc narrative where you've gotten away from the single tales, and now there's more sort of a space opera going on with Rex. But he's basically just a bounty hunter kind of struggling with Alzheimer's, and space Alzheimer's, being 2,000 years old. And he, even with that, he's still the deadliest person ever.
He
Yeah,
kind of
I'm pretty
reminds
sure.
me of
Yeah.
the outlaw Josie Wales in the way that
Oh
he
yeah.
picks up people.
Yeah. Yeah, he just keeps people, just like, he's the person who wants to be completely alone and keeps dragging people along in his wake. But it's also weird, he keeps dragging along non-humans. Like,
Mm.
he's basically surrounded by bots and a dog. And because Rex has, like, the one thing that people kind of picked up and noticed on, they said the interesting thing about Rex is that without the readers trying to make any big sort of political statements or anything like that, in Galaxy's Edge, the bot, and Star Wars too, bots are sort of bots and droids are sort of accepted as slaves, and there's a running joke in Star Wars and things like that. But in Galaxy's Edge, no one ever kind of questions the lives of bots, and without, I don't even know how we did it, but I know where it came from, and I know why Rex did it. And he doesn't make any big points about it, but every time he gets a bot, he sets it free, and it just keeps hanging around him. But he treats it as a sentient life, like he treats it as a person. And we didn't like punch that, and it's not some political or agenda statement. It's just sometimes when you write really cool characters, they do stuff that you don't understand, and they have a life of their own. And it's, you just would like, that's the last thing you would think about Rex doing, but it makes complete sense because he's just sort of like the ultimate freedom loving person without, having to wear a MAGA hat and an American flag cape. you know, he doesn't, like, I don't think he even cares about those things. I think he just cares about, fighting tyranny and oppression. He doesn't like bullies, and he does, he stands up for his legionnaires. And sometimes there's this one guy that surfaces, and he always says, well, but when we meet Rex, he's killing legionnaires. And I always say, take a winged hussar from Poland that basically saved Western civilization and introduce him to a Soviet 1988 Polish conscript. They're not the same people. and,
Yeah.
and so so that winged hussar would not, and that's kind of like when we meet the legionnaires and galactic outlaws, they're not necessarily legionnaires anymore. They're basically a lot of points wearing like reflective shiny armor. They basically become tax enforcers, and Rex doesn't value a wreck. He thinks the thing that he's built, which we get in the in the Savage Wars, and especially book 2 in the human perspective, where you get the big reveal in book 1, and it's and you love Tyrus Rex, and you love him from the original series, and you love him from Contracts and Terminations, and then we just turn him into an utter you know jerk in book 2. But people who've been through military training understand why that's necessary. But it's even then, for a lot of those people, I think it's fairly shocking you know
I love Rex.
yeah, he's great.
He's like that. He's like that really angry uncle who's always pointing his finger at people. Only,
Exactly. But he never says anything, and he doesn't need anybody. That's the fun part about Rex, is
mm,
like he's always willing to do everything on his own, even if it requires a trigger nuke. And then he has these people like, well, I mean, it's interesting. There's a person who becomes the series villain who's really his friend, and he's always trying to convince Rex, like, no, we can do this as a team. And and that's why I love the trigger nuke meme so much. So whenever that surfaces about something, like, that's Rex. He would just like go on nuking things just to Rex will burn the village to save the village.
that's that's like cutting off the limb to cutting off the arm to save the cancer growing in your toe.
Exactly. That's a if he had become an oncologist, that would be what he would do.
Dear
Yeah.
Lord.
And he's
So
not, like, he's not a bright person. Like, that's the interesting thing about it. I think he's a deep person, and he's a person who runs his game, but he's not like, sometimes when writers write things, the character becomes a complete Mary Sue. And the fun thing about Rex is he's not a super genius, but he does know what he knows, and that's the interesting thing. You know what I mean? So if you ever worked for like an old guy, doing construction or fishing or whatever, and you learned all this wisdom, you definitely know who Rex is. Maybe he's not the guy who graduated with a degree in physics and philosophy, but he's the guy that can tell you to measure twice and cut once.
hell yeah, hell yeah. That's
Yeah.
why in Last Savage Wars books we find out what kind of rifle he uses when he's coming up. Good man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's nothing better for the post-apocalypse. And what rifle is that, Walt?
Oh, that would be a Marlin 4570, of course.
I
Um,
figured that would be at hand right there.
no, no, never. My rule is that much like the Batman, you never
Mhm.
see Bruce Wayne and never see Bruce Wayne and
Yes.
Batman in the same place. You'll never see me on camera with me and my guns in the same place. In fact,
Yes.
I believe they reside in a lake somewhere in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. My M1 accidentally fell into the Pacific Ocean.
And what a beautiful mermaid that is, dear Lord. If people want to stalk you on the internet, what's the best place to find you?
I think honestly, go to Galactic Outlaws if you love Galaxy's Edge, and that's just a really great, fun place where you can find a lot of, like, the cool thing about the Galaxy's Edge culture and group is they really have made a lot of really cool swag that you can get into and put on your carrier or wear on your head, and that's kind of fun. And there's a timeline over there that can, like, basically break down the books and tell you where you want to start. If you want to just jump into the main series, just jump in at Legionnaire. If you just want to, like, read like Mac Bolan style bounty hunter tales, just read Contracts and Terminations. And if you want to just read big old straight up war, read the Savage Wars. Then we have some other little tales called the Order of the Centurion, and those are all one-off standalones. They're all very fun. Galactic Outlaws is a great place to start. If you're on Facebook, go over to the Galaxy's Edge fan club and join that, because it's irreverently funny, and it's just that there's a lot of veterans over there, and they're very welcoming, even if you're not a veteran type. And everybody has a lot of fun, and you should just come for Galaxy's Edge but stay for the memes. If you really want to follow me, and you have like very strong political feelings in any one direction or the other, I'm very right. I'm very conservative. So you don't have to, like you could follow my Instagram posts and, I just, those are just me taking pictures of Nicole. I have an author page, which is basically books and everything like that. If you follow me directly, you're not going to get so much Galaxy's Edge as an old man screaming at clouds. That's what that's about. And then Twitter is that old man screaming at clouds, but he drank all the coffee the NFL allows the average 300-pound linebacker to drink pregame. So that's a dumpster fire in of itself. But so there you understand the spectrum of where I'm at, and if you it's you'll figure it out. But I'm also a lot of fun, and even if you don't think like me, I always make a place for everybody to talk. I never flame anybody. I like dialogue. I like discussion. I like freedom. Everybody, even if you don't think like me, you have the freedom to be whoever you want to be. That's what I really believe in, is the Constitution allows everybody, even people I don't agree with, to be what they want to be. And I think that's great.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me, sir. This is fun, and I'm looking forward. Walt and I play D&D on Fridays with the legendary Jim Ward and a cast of zany characters, and we have the most fun because we get to be 12 years old again. So I look forward to that.
And I get to actually speak without an accent like when I was 12.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
fantastic. We want to thank everybody who came out, both on Facebook and the YouTubes. And, we'll catch you next time for more caffeine, coffee, reading, writing, and everything in between here on Keystroke Medium. Cheers. And